Let's get started. So thank you, everyone. I'll go start my video. So you can all see me in my Beeswax uniform here. I am Paul Connecton. I'm CMO here at Beeswax and the host of many of these 15 minutes with Beeswax sessions. We're doing this in the time of COVID to give folks and our customers and people we're friends with and talking to some extra resources that they can learn about random topics that either pertain to the Beeswax product or just the internet in general or life in general. So this one is really interesting about safe password storage. It's a lot of topic, it's a deep topic that I don't know very much about, but does have an impact on our daily lives and of course in business. So today I have our principal engineer, Ron Rothman. He's also the first engineer ever to work at Beeswax, and he's an expert on passwords. So without any further ado, I will toss it over to Ron. Take it away.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Today I want to talk to you about safe password storage. What we're talking about is what happens when you hit submit and send your password to a website. What do they do with it? How do they get that right? More importantly, how do they get it wrong? So several years ago, I joined a website, a small message board website. And the day after I joined, I got this email from them notifying me that I had a message in my inbox. When I read this email, it made me angry. See if you can tell why this email made me angry. It was this. It was that they included my password in the email. They tried to be helpful, but instead they just provoked anger. So this is not an isolated incident. The same month, I got this email from Sprint. When I hit forgot password, they sent me this email with my password. Now, what's the big deal? Why am I getting angry over websites sending me my password? Well, the thing is, email is just not secure. It's not safe, and it's not a way to send secrets. Now, I'm not talking about someone hacking into my email account and going through my inbox, reading my messages. I mean, that could happen, but that's not what I'm even afraid of. I'm talking about the fact that email is just fundamentally not a secure medium. When an email message is sent, before it even arrives at my inbox, it has traveled over the internet, over other computers, all of which can read it if they want to. Now, no one's really listening, but if they wanted to, they could. So email is just not secure. But it turns out that that's not even the real problem. That's not really what made me angry about those emails. There's a bigger problem. What's the bigger problem? The bigger problem is that those websites should never have even stored my password. They shouldn't have even known my password and been able to email it to me. Now that might sound surprising because you'd think that the websites need to know my password in order to verify my identity when I try to log in again. But let's take a look at that. So when you register for a website, you give them your name, your email address, you maybe make a username and a password. And all that information, including the password, gets sent over to the website's servers. And over there, it gets stored in a database. Now, a naive way to store it might be something like this. Here's a table where they're storing the usernames, and for every username, they're storing the corresponding password, just in clear text. So what's good about this is, well, very little. It happens to be simple, and it happens to work. When you try to log in, you provide your username and a password, and they just take the password you provided, compare it with the password in the database from when you registered, and if they're the same, they let you in. Okay, well, what's bad about this? Well, for one thing, if hackers break into the website and steal this table, then they now have your password, your username, your email, and everybody's passwords, usernames, and emails. And let's face it, we all reuse passwords on multiple sites, and now the hackers have the password, presumably, to multiple sites. Even if it's just this site, we don't want this. This is not a good thing. There are more problems than that. Here's another one. Employees at this company, people who work for this website, can also look at this table and see my password. They can log in as me. They can use this password elsewhere. Hopefully they wouldn't want to. There's no need to presume malicious intent, but things do happen. And I would prefer that nobody, including employees of this website, be able to view my password. So how can we solve this problem? Oh, sorry, before we get to solving it, if you doubt that websites can get hacked, I just want to prove to you that that's not the case. So I had many examples to choose from, including banks. And if banks can get hacked, then anybody can get hacked. I chose Sprint because I mentioned Sprint earlier in the talk, and this just happened less than a year ago. Sprint got hacked and PIN numbers were stolen. Evite got hacked and passwords were stolen. My data was leaked in both of these breaches, so these are personal to me. So websites do get hacked all the time, unfortunately. So what can we do about it? You might think, instead of storing the passwords in clear text, let's encrypt them so that the hackers can't look at them. Here's what that would look like. When you register for this site, you give your username and password, and the site takes that password, uses a secret key, and encrypts the password, and then stores only the encrypted password in the database. Then later, when you try to log in, you give your username and a password, and the website goes ahead and looks up the encrypted password, decrypts it with the same secret key, and compares what they get with the password you just provided trying to log in. And if they're the same, then you are who you say you are, and they let you in. Here's what that might look like. Here's what that database might look like. There are usernames, and now instead of clear text passwords, we're storing encrypted passwords, and then somewhere we're also storing the encryption key. So how well have we done here? How good is this? Okay, well, it's marginally better than storing clear text passwords, but why only marginally? Well, for one thing, if hackers are sophisticated enough to break into this website and steal this database, then they very well may be sophisticated enough to break in and steal the secret key also. And of course, once somebody has the secret key, they can decrypt all of these encrypted passwords, and we're right back where we started. It's as good as being unencrypted at that point. Secondly, we haven't solved the other problem of people who work for this website and have access to this key also being able to decrypt these passwords and having access to my passwords. So we're basically where we started. We're only marginally better. So what can we do about that? Well, we'll use another technique. Instead of encryption, we'll use a technique called hashing. The way hashing works is it takes a block of text, in this case, just a password, and it runs it through a mathematical function to generate a string of, say, 32 characters. And every time you give it the same input, the same password, you'll generate the same 32 characters. Now, there's no way to go backwards from those 32 characters. No, there's no decryption here. It's not encryption, so there's no decryption. It's just a way to take some text and generate 32 characters from that text. So when you register for the website will take your password and run it through a hash. And what they'll store in the database is the 32 characters that result from the hash value. Then later, when you try to log in, they'll take the password you're providing, they'll run that through the same hash, and then they'll compare the resulting 32 characters to the 32 characters in the database from when you originally registered. And if those are the same, then they'll let you in. Here's what that looks like in the database. So here's the table, and we're storing usernames and we're storing hashed passwords. Now, how well have we done here? Well, let's see. If hackers break in and steal this data, they have no way to get my password from this hash. They can look at this hash all day long. There's no way to get from this hash back to my password. So that's good. We've succeeded at hiding my password from hackers who have broken in and stolen this data. Employees of the company can hash all day long, and there's also, likewise, no way for them to go back and get my password from it. And so we've succeeded at solving that problem too. So here we have a mechanism for allowing verified logins without revealing passwords to anybody who looks at this data. So that's great. So we've succeeded. Is it all good news though? Well, obviously I wouldn't be asking that question if it were, so no. There's still some bad news. What is that bad news? Well, there's a case where two users might use the same password. And in fact, that's a very common case because especially when you have a lot of users, you're going to get reuse of the same password. And that poses a problem because the hash values for those passwords are going to be the same. And when a hacker looks at this, it's a strong hint to the hacker that these two users have used a common password. And what that lets the hacker do is try to guess the password. The top 10,000, 100,000 most common passwords are well known to hackers. And they can just hash all 100,000 of those very easily and quickly and wait until they find a matching hash value. And once they've found one, then that is our password. They have successfully guessed our password at that point, and we're not secure anymore. And so what can we do to mitigate this? Well, there's a technique called salting, and all that salting is adding a few characters to every password, so a few random characters to every password. And so what would happen is when you register for this site, you give a password. The website would generate a few random characters. That's called the salt. The salt is those random characters. And it would add those random characters to your password and hash both of them together. The resulting 32 characters would be stored in the database like before. And then later, when you go to log in, you provide your username and a password. The website would use your username to look up the salt that was used when you registered. It would add that salt to your password, hash that, look at the resulting 32 characters, compare that to the original 32 characters when you registered, and if they're the same, then they let you in. And so here's what that database might look like. There's usernames and all the salts that were used and generated and used, and then the hashed passwords. And notice that because the salts are different here, the resulting hashes are different. And we've removed that information to the hackers that these two users have used the same password, and we've made it a lot harder to guess. So we've solved that problem by introducing this salting technique. And so there is more, but I'm going to stop here and just say that we've more or less solved it. This is the best practice for what a website should do. And notice that if a website follows this best practice, there's no way for them to be able to email me my password. And that's why when a website emails me my password, it's a hint to me. I know for a fact at that point that they're not following this best practice. They're following the worst practice of storing the passwords in clear text. So what I'd like everyone to take away from this is, well, first of all, that email is just not secure. But more importantly, that websites should never be storing your password. There's no excuse for it. There's no reason for it. There are easy techniques that can avoid that. And of course, we should avoid the double whammy of emailing you your password if they do store it. And I'd just like to raise everyone's consciousness about this topic so that if you get emailed your password by a website, please write to them, admonish them to use best practices. I'm happy for you to contact me and I will help you craft an email to that website. So with that, I'll be happy to take some questions. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah, that was certainly informative. A lot of stuff I didn't know about passwords. So let's go to the questions. All right. Let's see. And by the way, everyone, if you want to ask a question, you can do so by just submitting with the Q&A feature that's on the bottom of your screen. All right. Okay, so I have one question. What about third-party services for storing passwords? What is your thought on that? Is it a secure way to do it? Does it help? All that kind of stuff.
That's a great question. I was hoping someone would ask that. So I didn't mention that because I had to cut the scope of this short presentation, but I'm in favor of that. I think that's a great way for websites to avoid having to face this problem in the first place. Let Google or Amazon or whoever store the passwords and let them handle the security of that password. And so, yes, I'm in favor. There are trade-offs. There are privacy trade-offs with that technique, but in terms of the security of the passwords, it is secure and recommended.
Yeah, and imagine if it's like that's the one thing they do, it's just
exactly
passwords secure. What's your opinion on those types of products that make you change your password every so often? I've seen debate on both sides that creates security vulnerabilities because people can't remember their password and there's all stuff around that, or that it really does help with these websites protect users' data more.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of forcing users to change passwords, but I am in favor of using a password manager, KeePass, LastPass, there's several of them, to generate secure passwords in the first place, and then not having to, then that removes the burden of having to remember them in the first place, so you don't really need to change them at that point. Yeah, and now, of course, if you think you've been compromised, then you should go and change all your passwords.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what does that mean if you feel you've been compromised? Can you give us an example of how you might feel you've been compromised? When should you go and wholesale change every password to everything you've ever done?
Sure, yeah, maybe I misspoke. Not every password you've ever done, but if you've ever received an email like I have from a website apologizing that or it's usually a non-apology, but notifying you that they've suffered a data breach and your information was leaked, then you can read very carefully what exactly was leaked. Now, in that case, you should change your password to that website, and anywhere else that you use the same password, If there's any other place you've used the same password, you should change it everywhere you've used that password. If you're lucky and you used a password manager, or or if you're wise and used a password manager, or you happen to only use the password in that one website, then you only have to change it on that one website and you're fine. But anywhere you've used that password should be changed immediately. That's what I had in mind when I said that.
Got it. And by the way, if anyone has a question they want to ask around live, you can use the raise hand feature and raise your hand, and we'll pipe you in, video, audio, whatever you want. You can ask the question. But in the meantime, we have another question about hashing. So is hashing the same as encrypting? We can encrypt twice to compare the password, just as hashing, without the need to decrypt.
I'm not sure I get the gist of the question, but hashing and encrypting are actually, so they're similar in that they both take some text and convert it to some other characters. So they're similar in that way, but they're very different in that encryption is symmetrical in that you can reverse the process. It's reversible, whereas hashing is very much by design not reversible. And so there's some important properties about a hashing algorithm. One of them is that it can't be reversed. Another one is that small changes in the input result in big changes in the output. And so if you change one character in your password, the resulting 32 characters that come out of the hash will all be very different. It won't just be one character different. So there are certain properties of hashes. So they are different from encryption. They are different from encryption algorithms, yes.
Yeah, some other questions related to third-party services saving passwords. Is Google Chrome safe to save your password?
In my opinion, yes, it is. It's just as safe as any password manager.
Yeah, and then a question about, do we believe free services will actually keep your password safe, or should you really only go for a paid service?
That I don't know. That I really can't speak to. Yeah, that's beyond my knowledge, to be honest.
All right. We have time for just a couple more questions. I actually have one about coming up with good passwords. Is there a rule of thumb? I've once heard that, like, find some sentence that means something to you but nothing to anybody else, and the length of the password being so long, if it has spaces in it, all this kind of stuff is just difficult to brute force crack. So are there any best practices you have around creating a good password?
Sure, there are a lot of them, and you can look them up online. But the main points that I follow is they should be long. They should not be short. At least they should not be short. Sentences are great. I use sentences for every password that's important to me. I use sentences, and that can include punctuation, spaces, capitals. It's something that it's easy for me to remember, but it's virtually impossible for someone to guess. Right. The other thing is I do reuse passwords on sites that are throwaway that I really don't care about. I will reuse a password there that's easy for me to remember in short, where I don't actually really care if it gets breached. So that reduces the cognitive load on me that I have to remember so I separate the important passwords from the unimportant passwords.
Yeah. I guess related to that, how much of the problem is a technical problem and how much of it is a kind of a human behavior problem?
It's a little of both. It's largely so it's both, right? Behavior drives a lot of it because we don't want to have to remember a lot of passwords. It's just so much easier for us to use simple phrases, to use the word password, the word monkey, the word 1 2 3 4 5 6. And a lot of it is a human factor. But as I tried to show in the presentation, there are technical issues that play into it, and there are bad ways of storing even good passwords. You could have a password that's the size of a Shakespeare play, but if the website stores it in the clear and that website gets hacked, then that password that's very long and beautiful is compromised. And so right. So it's really both at play here.
Okay, and our last question, how do you decide what you don't care gets breached? What characteristics of a site makes you give it a good password? Is it financial information, storing credit cards? How do you decide what your level of security risk profile is for a particular site?
Yeah, that's a good question. So of course, anything financial, of course, gets a strong password. Most things get strong passwords. The things that I had in mind when I said trivial are things like, I'll give you an example. For Mother's Day, I ordered my mom some socks with pictures of her grandkids on them. And so there's a site I'm probably never going to order from again. They don't have anything important about me. They don't have any information that's important about me. All they have is my name and address, which is public known anyway. And so there's a site where I don't care. I'll just use a password that I've reused elsewhere. It's not the word password. It's not one of the most 10,000 common passwords, but it's something that I've reused elsewhere so that I can remember it, because I'm probably never going to visit that site again anyway.
All right, we'll close with my last question. Well, what's your favorite password that you love to use? Just kidding. All right, everyone. So before we go, I do want to tell you about our next week's session. So this one was a more general thing. Next week, we're going to be talking about a feature of Beeswax called Data Augmenter. So for those of you who don't know what it is or don't know what you might want to do with it, this will decode that topic. And it's being held by our co-founder, Shamim. And he'll talk you through in 15 minutes things you can do with a data augmenter. So let me just circulate that link that you can use to sign up for that session right now. We will send out an email reminding you guys there, but here you go. Just sent it through Zoom, and I hope to see you there because this will be a really good session. So I want to thank Ron. I want to thank everyone who joined. I hope you guys are all safe and practicing good social distancing, and we'll continue with our next episode of 15 Minutes with Beeswax. Have a great week, everyone.